Hello again. You are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am sitting down with Dr. Lisa Hunsicker, and we are going to talk all things life, learning, loving, perfection, or releasing perfection. Before we get started, let me introduce you to Dr. Lisa. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ev. It's so great to be here. Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Hunsicker. I am a board-certified plastic surgeon and owner and CEO of Revala Plastic Surgery. I'm also the host for the Soulful Surgeon Podcast. I'm an author. I'm a wife and mother, but some of the other things I like to do have to do with scuba diving. I'm a dive master. I like wine, so I'm a sommelier. And one of the little things most people don't know about me, I love speed, so I am a racing car driver. So I'm so excited to be here with you, Evelyn.
Lisa, first of all, I mean, like the array of things you just I'm a wife and a mother and a podcaster, also a plastic surgeon, and I race cars and scuba dive. How young were you when you even recognized you liked such a different array of things? Or like, did you start trying new things as you got older? Because wow.
Well, I think I've always had an adventurous spirit, and I think the concept of going fast really came to me at a very young age. My dad had a Corvette, so I kind of joke I was born and bred in a Corvette, and so having that mindset of going fast and just the feeling of that. And so it really expanded onto many different things. And really, I love to try things. And, there's certainly things where I've tried and said, that is not for me, but there's many other things I've really tried and said, okay, this is really cool. I could do this.
When did you first like drive at that speed on your own?
Legally or illegally?
Go with both.
Well, I was driving illegally fast probably as soon as I had a driver's license and driving my parents' big, huge Caprice Classic boat. And I grew up in South Florida, so I was driving very fast out at the beach. My folks always thought that we were off at the movies or other things, and I was meeting up with friends. And most of the time that was true, but other times I might have been out at the beach doing naughty things with their car.
I love it. I love it. And then how about scuba?
I am a water baby. And so the interesting thing, as a child, I actually drowned and I was rescued by my cousin. And I did not like anything water. I was very, very little. And they put me in swimming lessons, and that overcame the fear really very early. I didn't like it. They threw me in the pool and I suck and I went, I was just this little tiny, I don't know, I think I was probably like 4 years old. I locked myself in the bathroom, like, no one's going to make me swim. But it really ended up being such a pivotal point because I developed a very different relationship with water and grew into that and grew up swimming, water skiing, snorkeling, being in the ocean. I got certified to scuba dive when I was 19. And so that really became a love affair that started so early and has just stayed with me always. And really, my favorite place is being underwater.
Wow. When you say that, I literally feel a little bit of anxiety come over me because I was the opposite. I loved being in the pool. We had a small pool growing up, but when I was maybe 12-ish, I think it was 12-ish, I went to the local pool with my cousins and I didn't know how to swim. But they said the way that you learn is to be thrown into the deep end. And yeah, so they threw me in the deep end. I went into a panic, went into an asthma attack in the water, and had to be pulled out. And the truth is, I've never, ever, still to this day, gotten over that fear. I stopped going in the pools. Like if I go to the beach, maybe I'll go in the water to like my shins and then I'm out. I have a pool in my yard. I don't really go in it. So I've said that a goal of mine is to literally face that fear head on and overcome it by the time I'm 50. So I've got a little time yet, but that's the goal.
Okay, I see a dive trip in our future. Because I have to tell you, there's nothing more motivating than going underwater and feeling the quiet and the
Mm.
calm. And it's like this big liquid hug that you're getting with all the water around you. And then the life that is underneath there is just spectacular. And there's nothing you have to do, there's no agenda. You simply are being present. And you can do that in 6 feet of water. So you could literally stand up and then progress as deep as you want. So I look forward to doing this with you.
That's good. That's a goal. That's a goal. We're going to work on that. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how did you choose to go into plastic surgery? And like, how did that, just the experience in that field, how did that start to shape how you show up at work and at home?
Well, I knew I wanted to do medicine. I was one of those weird folks that knew really early, like fifth grade. And I didn't really have a frame of reference because no one in my family had gone to college. So I didn't really even know what that journey looked like. But I just knew that I had interest in science and specifically in health related things. And so I just kept doing science that really aligned with me. When I was in college, I had to work in order to put myself through college. And one of the jobs was I worked in an emergency room and I was an ER tech. And so I was the one that kind of cleaned up everything after everyone was done. And so on this particular day, this woman was in a car accident and she had sliced her face open. And I ended up getting assigned to her because this is in Tallahassee, Florida. And at the time, she was speaking Spanish, and no one on staff in the ER at that time, there wasn't a translator available. And I spoke Spanish, so I got assigned to her to be her translator. So I stayed with her for the day. And as the day progressed, the plastic surgeon came in to repair her face. And that was the coolest thing ever because when he finished, she could smile again. And it was so fast, it was so instant, and it just looked like he had drawn a little fine line on her face, which before it was gaping open. And so I really thought about, I think this is something that I would really like to do. This really suits me. I definitely have the proceduralist personality. I like to do stuff and I'm really good with my hands, so I like that. And so this naturally progressed. And I think why plastic surgery, as part of training, we go through and do all the different specialties, but I really enjoyed plastic surgery because there was such an intuitive, creative process that was going. And while the operations were similar in many instances, there were so many different nuances and there were so many opportunities to create that I really felt like this aligned with the more creative side of me.
Oh, I love that. Like, when you're saying you go into plastic surgery, is it different if you were someone who worked emergency? Is it someone if it's like elective? How do you find your clientele?
Well, it varies from person to person. My practice is specialized in breast and body, and that involves reconstructive as well as cosmetic. But pretty much when you go into practice, you figure out things that you like and things you don't like. And so you want to do more of what you like and do less of what you don't like. Plastic surgery is an incredible spectrum. And I think a lot of people see this as, Dr. 90210 in Beverly Hills and Extreme Makeover and Botched and all of the big persona that's on TV. But really, plastic surgery is about reshaping. And in many cases, it's congenital. There's a lot of newborn and youth surgery that is reconstructive, that you're just born with issues. Some are acquired through injury or disease. And then, of course, aging. My specialty really focuses a lot with women, especially after breast cancer, and not just breast cancer, but after the event of having babies. Because I think people really think that, oh, mommy makeover is this big, shishi, bougie kind of surgery. And it really does have a reconstructive aspect to it and really trying to restore a woman's body as much as possible after bearing children. So that's where my passion lies.
I kind of feel like there is, within the work that I do, I feel like I really love watching women make this connection with themselves and find this freedom within themselves and watch like them literally birthing new levels of confidence, right? And loving who they are. I can imagine that in your work, you get to see that in real time, right? Like there are, yes, it's the confidence, but then also I imagine I know what birthing does to your body, and I have friends who have gone through treatments for breast cancer and what that does to you, and that feeling of not being connected to your body anymore, or not recognizing what you look like anymore. So I imagine that you get to feel that same, like, that connection piece of I help them feel more like themselves again.
It's very interesting to be present. And I do feel like it's a privilege to sit in that space and be in a very vulnerable space, whether it be someone facing a new cancer diagnosis or someone who is really struggling with their body image, but also how their body is performing and how they see themselves in the mirror is not how they see themselves in their mind. And even physically, there may be limitations related to that. I think that there's often a disconnection that occurs with women to try and get through some of these moments. And it's really interesting to be present with them and guide them, bringing them into connection with what the situation is, and then transitioning through the surgery, and then coming out on the other side and seeing them in a grateful place, number one, but number two, watching what it does to their self-confidence. And it's a very interesting thing. I really feel like people can breathe again. And many times it's they don't have the sense that they're holding their breath, but when I see them, they're holding their breath, and it might be physically, but a lot of times it's emotionally. And even in severe cases of cancer where you're talking basically an amputation of part of your chest, and they're still being reserved and don't want to be judged and don't want to be considered vain. And all these things are very real issues, all of them, whether it's a cancer diagnosis or a postpartum diagnosis. And so really watching them change is incredible. And you see that. And sometimes I don't even really get to know people until about 6 weeks after surgery when this process has passed, because then they really let down that concern, and they're now coming present within themselves, and so they can be present with me. So it's nice to see that evolution.
I didn't even really consider that part of, like, the judgment and the shame that they carry around even wanting to make a change. I do feel like there's this ton of pressure from people to just accept yourself as you are, but without really ever teaching you how to accept yourself as you are, or even letting you accept yourself as you are. So, do you feel like part of your work entails conversations around that, or do you feel like they kind of naturally get there on their own?
I think that they naturally will get there on their own in some cases because they simply have to. They have to move forward. But it just really, it's every person's journey, and they just have to walk through it on their own and see what fits. And I think women are very different than men in the way that they approach caretaking. And I think that we as women often we're trying to do all the things all at once, and we don't necessarily compartmentalize it. And I have to be the mom, and I have to be the wife, and I have to take care of the job, and I have to take care of the home, and I have to manage the kids. And so I think where that vulnerability and shame occurs, I think as women, we don't really learn how to receive. We don't receive gracefully. We don't acknowledge that we deserve to receive. And it's just, it's kind of like, I'm a fan of Kathy Heller, and Kathy Heller talks about the heart. And I'm working on a book right now called The Strength to Lay It Down, which is about heartfelt leadership. And one of the things that she references, and I think this is a really important topic to talk about, is the heart. The heart is receiving and giving, right? We have all this blood coming into it that has toxins from the body, and then we're sending it off to the lungs to make it better, and then we're sending it off to the body in a better way. And so we receive, we modify, and we send out better than what we get, hopefully. The problem is we think about that as women, we just don't receive, but we keep giving, and we keep giving and giving and giving, but we're not receiving, so we have this empty chamber. And so it looks and feels so different to many people. And I think that even women who are having breast cancer, they feel like maybe they don't matter enough, or it's too much to ask, and they don't want to be a burden to their families. They don't want to financially spend money to do it. They don't want to take time out. They won't don't want to have downtime. They need to pay for their kids' soccer. And literally, I've had women who have talked to me that their kids, and we're not talking professional soccer, right? We're talking the 5-year-olds at the field, and they don't want to give up the extra $30 to get something for their treatment that may be related to even their chemotherapy or something else, something to improve their life, to make this process better for them. So it's something that we inherently are taught to give, but we are absolutely not taught to receive. And I feel like this is a big issue for us.
I feel like so much that, I mean, from when we are little, it is ingrained in us that every ounce of our value is calculated by how much we do for other people. And if we are completely depleted and completely disconnected and exhausted and overwhelmed, then that means we're doing a good job, right? So, like, sometimes we're like wearing our just exhaustion and burnout like a freaking cape. Like, look at me. My family is taken care of. My family has everything that they need. My house is perfectly clean. The laundry's done. The groceries are stocked. Everybody has what they need, but I'm falling apart. And who am I to say that out loud?
No, no, you can't, because that's not your focus. It's not about you.
Mhm.
You don't even exist. You're the orchestrator. You're the conductor of the orchestra of everyone else, except that you're in this black cloak that you can't even see who that person is.
So let me ask you, with all those things in mind, do you feel like you carried those same burdens as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, and then go into work and pour out more to your patients, right? How do you navigate, how do you navigate taking care of you in some way or another?
It's a difficult thing, and it's a process. And there's days that I'm better at it and days that I'm not. And it's taken me decades
Mm.
to really evolve. And, part of leading into my sommelier degree, I, I was just so burnt out. All I was doing was everything for everyone else. And I finally just said, that's it. I want to do a couple of fun things for me. I only have Sundays. So what are the things that I can do on Sundays? Well, I love soccer. I play soccer. So I joined a soccer league and got on a team and played Sunday mornings. And we have a wonderful school here in town. The International Wine Guild is here in Denver. And so I joined with them. And Sunday afternoons, I did all of my sommelier certifications. So it was a time where I physically was taken out of every single role. I was no longer a mother. I was no longer a wife. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't anything. I was just a girl who was showing up, who had an interest in kicking a ball or sipping wine and talking about it. And so that really kind of pulled me out of that dark, dark feeling of it's all about everybody else. So that's how it started. And then I think there's just some days where I show up better than others. And I can think about when my son was little, and he has ADHD, and so trying to get him ready to go, and I had to be in the OR. There's teams that are waiting for me, and he's just the butterfly. Like, come on, dude, we have to go. And so, you have to show up to work, and you've already wrangled this little person who has no idea what they're doing, and you're so angry and you're so discombobulated, and your energy is off, and the last thing you want to do is take care of one more thing, but that's the number one thing you have to do. And it forces you to just set those things aside. And so some days I show up and I'm point. And I think now I think I'm old enough and I've just been doing this long enough that I really have started to share things with my patients that before, we've been programmed to be stoic and you don't tell patients anything about you and you're just this rock
Mhm.
that they can depend on and there's nothing that will shift that, and the only thing that you are going to present to them is confidence and strength. And yes, walking into a surgery, that's really kind of what you need, but for most every other moment, you could have that conversation. I am so sorry I'm delayed. Oh my God, were you sitting in that same traffic? I was sitting there and this guy, you can have these real person conversations so that they see that I'm really a human being. And yes, they kind of want me to be that human doing to take care of them in some ways, but I think giving them the opportunity to actually know me and know a little bit about me, it's been quite a journey because I have patients now who I've taken care of them for 20 years. And they come in and they say, "Oh my gosh, what's your racing? What's happening in the racing? And where are you? And did you travel to this state or did you try?" So they know about these things. How are the kids? Are the kids in college yet? Oh, oh, your son's at CU. What did he decide to study? Oh, he's studying business. Like we're having this conversation very much like you and I are, so that they're seeing me as a person, but in the same moments, we're still having these physician patient conversations of this is what's going on, this is what I see, this is what I think we need to do. And I think my other perspective is I don't have a paternalistic approach to practicing medicine, and that's something I've been very adamant about because I think we were trained that way, and I don't feel like that people can make good decisions when they're told what to do. I feel like it's my job to be their partner and give them all the options, tell them based on that, I think these are the best options for you. These are the things I'm worried about. These are the things I'm really excited about. Tell me what you're thinking, and then let's move a plan together. And there's risks and benefits, and let's talk about them. And ultimately, you're the person undergoing a treatment, so you have to be comfortable with that. And so I think that really has highlighted a practice style that I think a lot of people aren't accustomed to. And so I think that's the draw to our practice because we really do focus on people and really try and make them feel like they're family and they're seen and they're heard. And my evolution is now trying to make sure that I'm seen and heard and that my community in healthcare and medicine is seen
Yeah.
and heard. And that's my endeavors through the Soulful Surgeon podcast.
Mhm. I love that. And what you're saying is reminding me, my oldest had knee surgery last year. And obviously, someone like you who does surgeries all the time, it's normal. Someone like me who has never had to put my daughter under, totally not normal. But I loved that. And it is depending on what doctor's office we were at, the conversations were very different. Some of them were like very sterile, quick conversations of, you know, here are the facts and here's your next appointment. But with her surgeon, I loved that. First of all, yes, he addressed me, but mostly he talked to her. He talked to her about dance. He talked to her about the muscle on her body. He talked to her about her mindset. The surgery itself did not have a high success rate in history, but also it was a last resort. So when he said to her, he gave her these statistics about success. And he also said, I need you to understand that part of your healing journey is your determination to heal. Part of your success is going to be on how much you're telling yourself that you can do this. So I can give you these statistics, but you also get to decide. So I love that he approached it like that. But then, because at home we have lots of conversations like that, he solidified a teaching that I give her at home, and it totally changed the way she saw the surgery. It totally changed the way she looked at healing. Even when she felt pain or discomfort, she could talk herself through the fact that this is normal, but this is not forever. So I love that you focus on that connection piece because it's really difficult to be the patient going in there and when, the facts are read off and there's no connection there, it just feels like it feels very transactional, but also you just feel like you feel a little invisible and a little like not important. So I love that. So my question though is I'm trying to look at your perspective as the doctor when there is such a demand actually for you to be always performing at 100, right? Like as the patient, I walk in there and yes, I want to know you and yes, I want to be comfortable with you, but ultimately I want to leave here okay. So, and my expectation is, or I would think everybody's expectation is that you're going to operate in basically perfection. Like we talked about before we started recording, you said there's a lot of that expectation of perfection. How do you navigate that type of thinking when you already have home, children, spouse, responsibilities, and then you come to work and it's like responsibilities elevated?
It's amplified for sure. You know, it's been a very interesting journey, and I've had a relationship with perfectionism since I was very young. And so perfection is rewarded because the more you get things right, in many cases, the more you move forward and the more that you succeed. And I think in medicine, perfection is the goal because it's so black and white in so many ways. And the irony of it is that our thinking is so black and white, but the reality of medicine is so gray. There's so many shades of levels, and you take if you're approaching a patient, there's so many different nuances. But in our thinking, we really get programmed. We have algorithms, if then, do this, do that. And so you really get to where you are striving to hit the algorithms. And part of it is fatigue, and you have to perform at such exceptional levels, way above and beyond many other people's demands, in extreme fatigue. And that fatigue is physical, and it's also hugely emotionally and mentally. So you get to the point where you're just pursuing this algorithm so that you can be a walking zombie and still get it right. And people are having very good outcomes. They have no idea that you're dissolving as a human being, but people are still processing all of these diagnoses and treatments with exceptional outcomes. But the problem with perfection, and I think we're really honing this through our training. And there is another aspect in medicine that no one wants to talk about, and that's fear. And fear is rampant. And fear is the terrorist of healthcare. And it's the patients have fear because they have an issue and they want to be taken care of and they're trying to get better and they're afraid they're not going to, or it's not going to turn out how they want. But fear from a healthcare provider's perspective is so much different because it's fear of making mistakes. So if you do make a mistake, is someone going to be hurt? Can they die? And the answer is yes, depending on what the situation is. And am I going to be the direct cause of that? Maybe. And what happens when you do your best and the situation is completely unsurvivable? It has nothing to do with you. You just happen to be the person who is on scene with whatever the situation is, but it's never going to have a good outcome no matter what anyone does. But then there is this layer of being sued. And so it just everything you do, you're always thinking about the physicians and the nurses and all of the healthcare workers. When you go to see your providers, you're sitting in a courtroom, you just don't know it because the courtroom is in our mind of how are we addressing you and how are we taking care of you, and is it are we going to get sued over it? So there's so many layers to that, and perfection is this way that we convince ourselves that if I just drive this process and I stay in this moment, I'm going to be safe. And you're going to be okay. And I'm going to be okay. And we both get to go home to our families at the end of the day. And the problem with perfection is that it's excellence without the ability to breathe or pivot. And the problem with perfection is that you have to know all the cards before you play the card game. You have to know all the variables. And when those variables shift, now you're completely unsteady because you don't have room for flexibility. And so, really, what I try and approach things, I really want to approach it from a point of mastery with presence.
Mhm.
And so, I'm letting the idea of perfection fall away because I feel that it doesn't really serve me. It doesn't honor me as a human being, and it doesn't account for the fact that I'm a human being. But it also doesn't honor whoever I'm present with, and it doesn't honor that situations may change, and I have to be inflexible in order for perfection to be successful. Whereas the more flexible I am, the better I perform and the better the outcomes for patients, for my relationships with people, my relationship with my family, and also with just knowing me and
Yeah.
giving me grace as well.
I can imagine trying to navigate working in the field that you're working in without grace and then aiming for perfection. It has to feel like a 24-hour physical stress that's always like that you carry mentally and emotionally, but then you're constantly stressed out and then working incredibly long hours, from what I understand.
That's true. That's true.
So how do you feel like in your practice, how do you feel like you address that differently than in like a major hospital, for example, where you don't get to make rules for yourself or your staff?
Well, I have to be flexible because as a surgeon, I have to work in a hospital. And so there are some inflexibilities that is the machine, and I simply have to accept that. And there's some wiggle room, and there's some things that I can adjust and request and demand. And those things may or may not show up. But I think as far as my private practice, it really, you still have the demands, right? I still have to pay rent every month. I've got to pay my staff. And all those things have to occur that are not flexible. But how I show up and the environment that I present for my staff, but also for the patients. The thing is that we have to model that, and I have to give them grace. I've had staff members who were pregnant and had kiddos, and so they're pumping during the day, and that's just who they are. And I can think about my own personal experience being pregnant and then going back to work 2 weeks postpartum and doing like 6 hour cancer surgeries. And I'm soaking wet and coming out of the OR, and I'm dripping from every place I can because I postpartum. And the family just wants to sit and visit to hear about how their loved one is like, I can't talk to you. I'm gonna have to call you from the car because I'm a mess here. And so really it's been something that for my staff, there's no reason for that to happen, and take time, build this into your schedule. We'll build blocks in, and if we're having an issue, we're going to tell patients, you know what, she had to breastfeed sooner than she thought. And so she's going to be with you as soon as she can. And the people who understand that are going to give us grace. And the people who don't understand that are going to go. And I distinctly remember I had a case where I was operating and I ended up getting a GI bug and I was so sick. And I managed to finish out my surgery, and I had clinic in the afternoon, and there's no way I was going to make clinic. And I'm throwing up, and I'm in the bathroom with diarrhea. And the staff told me, like, you have to come through the back. You can't come through the front because we have this couple up front and it's a pre-op. And they drove down from, it's like an hour and a half drive for their pre-op for an elective cosmetic procedure. And the husband threatened the staff that they were going to, quote, get my ass out of the bathroom and get them in because he took the day off. And so it's like, you can, number one, call security, and number two, you can tell them that they can never come back to our practice ever again. And so, but people just feel like they can treat people that way. And I think that in the past, I probably would have tried to take as many drugs as possible to keep me from throwing up and throw, pads on in case I'm having diarrhea, and then go sit there to be present. And I'm no longer going to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Oh my God, I love that so much because I understand that, yes, you took a day off and it's inconvenient that you drove an hour and a half, but also, there's first of all, you're a human. Humans get sick. And also, when you think about it, like, do I want someone who is incredibly ill responsible to take care of me? Or can I push this elective procedure to when she's healthier? I even remember, like, prior to my daughter's surgery, the doctor kept asking, like, do you have any questions? And I'm like, my only question is, like, did you sleep okay last night? Like, how are you feeling? Because I know that you know what you're doing, but I want to know that you're okay to take care of my most precious commodity here. So I love that you are completely just adding in boundaries that maybe some people are just not used to.
They really aren't. And I think that it just, it's allowing me to call those people out of our practice so that that's not the people that we want to take care of.
Yeah. I love that. And I assume that now your staff also just shows up differently because to go to work and know that you are cared for, that you are respected, that you are valued makes you show up different.
It's true. And I think one of the little subtleties that happens in many, many practices is that patients can act one way with the physician and very differently with the nursing staff or the administrative staff. And we have a absolute policy that the patients have to treat everyone the same. And if you're not treating us well, you're not going to be part of this practice. And so in the screening, part of the conversation that we have when we meet people and we make appointments, and we're interviewing them to see if they're right for us, because the staff has absolute 100% ability to not schedule people and not bring them into our practice. If they're not being treated right, then there's no reason for us to even take that on. And we're not going to have this misalignment. We want everyone taken care of in this practice, us and them. And if that's not a goal for on both sides, then we shouldn't be together as a team.
100%. So how do you then take those boundaries and use them to also support your personal life? Because, if we're talking about long hours, we're talking about, I mean, I assume you have to do like research on certain things in between procedures and, always make sure that you're honing in on your craft and practicing. Like, how do you then make time to be who you want to be at home too?
Well, it's a concentrated effort. And really, I struggle with that because the demands are so high. But really, every day, my morning, I really have just gotten much more focused of getting up earlier, because once I start at work, my day is hijacked. And so then I have to respond to all the demands. So it's about accomplishing whatever I can before I get to work. And so for me, I get up early in the morning. I typically will meditate for about a half hour. If I have enough time, I'll hop into the hot tub because I call it my think tank, because it's quiet, it's outside, it's in nature, and it's usually at dawn. And so we have open space behind us. And so the deer are out, the birds are out. And so I'm literally just being part of nature. And of course, being that water baby, I want to be having that liquid hug. So I'm in the hot tub, but really trying to center myself and really focus on me and the spirituality that I have, and where do I fit into the big picture as opposed to all the things I'm going to accomplish today and all the demands that I have, but what does that look like? And then getting my mind right to be able to show up the best way that I can and as authentically as I can with patients so I can simply be there and not have all of my stuff with me. And sometimes that works, right? And sometimes, I've got a sick kid at home or, a family is ailing and or maybe there's another patient who's really sick that I'm really worried about. So all those things are coming, but it's just trying to create spaces. I do work out as well. I like to lift weights in the morning. And then in the evenings when I get home, depending on what the weather's like, I, I really have committed to doing an outdoors walk because it's almost like a cleansing of me from the day and just letting the wind and, in the summertime sunshine, but just letting the weather almost cleanse and wash the residue of the day. And then I still have a lot to do. I have a ton to do at night and I still have charts to do. I have preparations for things. And then of course all the other things I like to do, planning and being present, showing up at dinner with no phones when I can. We're attached to technology in healthcare and it's really hard to set that down, but really making time for all of us where we put the phones away and unless we're on call that whatever it is going to wait because we're going to share a meal. And, I'm married to a trauma surgeon. So for us, it's really washing the residue for each other because sometimes it's so heavy you can't even do it yourself and you just need to process it with someone. And so really trying to make that our routine as much as possible because we have to let go of that because none of that is ours to take on. And I think that over time we have it's stuck to us. And so we have all the residue of all the experiences of all the people and good outcomes, bad outcomes, all the things that could have gone better, all those things in the judgments and that perfectionism, it just sticks to you like glue. And we have to manage it and process it so that we start each day as fresh as we can.
That sounds so beautiful and also so incredibly difficult because I imagine that it's very difficult for you to look at like every aspect of your work, every aspect of even the trauma work, and then to ultimately say, but also I matter. It's almost like it would be really easy to fall into that default thinking of I just have to do for everybody else and ignore myself. So I feel like being in work that is just so demanding of not just your time and energy, but of every part of you as a human, your fight to care for yourself has to be incredibly intentional, or it would just all fall by the wayside.
Well, and the thing is, no one else is going to do it. And that's the thing that I learned a long time ago. No one is coming for me. And I learned that a long time ago. And I had a really dark period of time in 2012. And I was a single mom at that time. I had a very busy practice. My son was young. And it was just overwhelming with all the demands. And I got to the point where I just could not breathe and I was suicidal. And so, I'm sitting in this place and it's like, okay, now I have to do something because I'm really considering that this is a good idea. So I go to the ER and we both agree that it's dire and that I'm very intentional about how I'm feeling. But the other thing is that immediately I think of, what, I have a breast cancer surgery tomorrow and I can't get treatment because this person has to have her cancer treated tomorrow and I can't step out of that and I can't make my problems this patient's problems. It's not her fault. I can't deal with my own stuff. And this is the self language that I'm using with me. And then I leave so I can go do this surgery. And the physician who is taking care of me agrees that I need to go and take care of this woman. So we both, I'm no longer I'm no longer the patient. I'm the physician. And so,
A robot.
and what I learned in that moment is no one's coming for me. And so unless I do it, it's not going to get done. And if I don't do it, I'm not going to be here. So when I chose to stay here and not choose suicide as a route, it was a much bigger undertaking than I imagined, but it's a much better way because it allows me to take care of me and know that my needs will be met because I know exactly what I need and I'm the one who's doing it. Now, the thing is, we're always on it's like triage, right? Because it's all this hierarchy of things. And so, okay, I get Christmas off and I'm here with my family and I've got everyone together. It's amazing. And we've got two doctors, two surgeons at home at the same time. It's amazing. And then the phone rings and then there's an urgency. And so all of a sudden I have to go, to the hospital to take care of someone. And now the expectation of all the families, like, you promised you're going to be here. Yes, but there's someone dying right now and they're bleeding and I have to take them to surgery right now. And so part of it is building time and setting up the boundaries in ways that we can really work to help our family understand who we are and say, I'm going to show up for you, but you have to realize I have to show up for other people. But you also have to set the boundaries. Like, I'm going to show up for you guys, but there's other facets. There's me and my family that I've got to get to as well. And so it's trying to find the really good balance between that. And it's hard.
I think it's super important too that you're even having these conversations and saying the things out loud because without ever hearing your perspective, I think people will just in general assume that you don't matter. Like you don't matter. It doesn't matter what you have to do at home. It doesn't matter who's waiting for you. My urgency is immediate. And you would never be met with compassion or grace. And I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of that. I think it's so important that you're sharing the perspective so people can kind of approach the doctor patient relationship more of a partnership than an expectation of you not existing outside of what you need to do for me.
Well, I think one of the difficulties is the time constraint. And by the way that insurance companies have really changed the entire landscape of healthcare, there are cases where physicians have, literally 7 minutes to be able to get in, meet someone, glean what's wrong, get them what they need, and then get out. And it really completely ignores and destroys the human interaction. And so for me to know you and for you to know me, there's just not enough time. I mean, if it would just right now, 7 minutes. Hi, Ev, how are you? How's it going? Hey, Lise, how are you? How's it going? 7 minutes is a short period of time. And so, but to glean into something much more intimate and complex of healthcare, it's so fast. And so, in order for me to keep my doors open, I've got to see X number of patients and I've got to pay the staff, I have to pay the rent. And so all these things are going. So at the end of the day, all those patients think that we're making tons and tons and tons of money, but really we're not. And we're just trying to make payroll and keep the lights on. And they don't even realize that there's many times that we don't even take paychecks. But this is the whole cumulative effect of this healthcare system. And we are so burnt out because we want to be present for patients, but the construct that we have to move in doesn't allow us to be authentic to who we are and doesn't allow us to really treat patients in the kind of way that they want to be treated and that we want to treat them.
Yeah. So much to all of that. So much. So I know I could literally keep you chatting all afternoon, but I know that with the Soulful Surgeon podcast are trying to open up different conversations. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that looks like in your world?
Yes, so this really is a love affair for me. And what this is, Soulful Surgeon Podcast is It's a healthcare workers podcast for them, about them. And really, it's a space that is safe and it's a place where they can come to be seen and heard. And really, my focus is to really change the thought process. We are not human doings, we are human beings, and we are not machines. And we have to get off the grind and we have to be able to set the boundaries for us and do all the things to take care of us and be human beings, and then still be able to show up to be able to be the kind of practitioners that we want to be and be present for patients as well. But no one's asking us. And like I said, in those days, I felt like no one was coming for me, and it was my job to take care of me. And in this scenario, it's our job to take care of ourselves. And we have to start talking about these things because I do see that healthcare is in imminent, imminent crisis of completely coming unglued and just becoming a depersonalized, dehumanized aspect for patients and for the healthcare teams. And I think it's going to collapse. And I see the good that we do, and I want us to be able to do that, but I want it to happen in the way that we all want it to be. Like I want to give and I want to take care of patients and I want to be present for as long as they need. And I want them to be able to be in the space to get what they need from me as well. But I also want them to see me that if I have a GI bug, your clinic 15-minute appointment can be rescheduled another day and give me the grace to be the human being for that too. So it's really creating a space for healthcare workers to be able to have that conversation and really kind of undoing all the training that we've gotten over the years and having a new mindset and a new training for us to say, hey, we are human beings and these are the things that we're going to focus on.
So
And
much.
if we don't, we're going to leave. And it's already happening, and people are falling out of healthcare left and right. And so if we're going to save this, we have to do something different.
Yeah. Especially in this society that is so disconnected, so well, disconnected from human beings and so connected to like devices, and then on top of it, sedentary and not well nourished physically. Just it feels like life, and I know that feels heavy, but it feels like life, the quality of life is declining. People's abilities to make decisions for themselves is declining, all the while healthcare is also so disconnected. So, yeah, it just feels so much more important for people to recognize that I'm you matter, right? You're a human. Your time matters. You deserve compassion. And also, like, I have to love myself enough to do the things on my end that are important to take care of me before I even need to come to you. So, yeah, I do feel that is like it's all connected.
Yeah,
So
I want to show up with mastery and presence for me and my patients.
beautiful. I love that so much. Lisa, before I let you go, is there anything that you want to share or offer with the audience before I ask you the question of the hour?
Well, the offering, of course, would be to join us on the Soulful Surgeon podcast, knowing that this is a healthcare workers place, but I think it's important for the public to really see who we are and understand who we are. And I'll be doing solo podcast episodes. I'll have lots of guests that really show some of the nuances of who we are. So I invite everyone to join us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, on YouTube as well. So all the platforms. So Soulful Surgeon Podcast with Dr. Lisa Hunsicker. You can find me on the web at soulfulsurgeon.com, and I'm also on Instagram at Soulful Surgeon, as well as LinkedIn at Lisa Hunsicker. So you can pick me up there. And we have a new book that I'm putting out. It's called The Strength to Lay It Down. It's a workbook, and it's focused not just for healthcare workers, but for anyone in a leadership role, focusing on heart-led leadership and dealing with the hard things that we deal with and putting up shields to get through these hard moments, but being able to bring the shield down and reconnect back to ourselves and to our families and our loved ones, but then being able to reflect back into what it is that we're doing and being able to really improve everything that we're doing and being mindful and insightful.
All right, before I let you go, just one final question, and that question is in the Minding Mind community, we are all about being intuitive, instinctually led, and doing what aligns with the soul of who we are. That's what I call minding mind. If it doesn't align with my soul, I don't want it. Keep it out there, all of it. So the question is, how do you feel minding yours, learning to live life your way? And I even see you shaping your practice to align with you as well. How do you feel that that impacts the legacy that you'll leave?
Well, it really is this is this necessary? Is this important to me? Is this important to me now? And so having those kinds of thoughts, is it aligning with me? And then bringing those same thoughts in with patients as well. But I have to tell you, I love Tanya Bailey Jones. And Tanya Bailey Jones says nacho. And she talks about having nachos. And the nachos are, it's nacho business. And so really when I'm in a position, I'm trying to decide, is this something I really want to take on? It's is this my business or is this not my business? And if it's not your business, then don't get involved in it and don't release your boundaries
Mm.
because there's only so much time and there's only so much energy and you've got to be mindful of that. And so if it's not serving you, if it's not serving what your goal is, and the care that in my practice, if it's not serving that as well, then it needs to not be part of that. So it makes it quick and easy for me to say, is this a nacho business, or this is really key to what I need it to be, and I need it to be part of what we're doing, and this is essential and it's authentic, and so we have to be mindful and we have to take care with whatever this topic is.
All of it. I love it.
Oh,
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your expertise. Thank you for the work that you do every single day. And I want to thank everyone else for joining the both of us today and tuning into another episode of Minding Mind. If this episode resonated with you, I ask that you please comment, rate, and review the podcast. You know that your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and please mind your business. We will catch you in the next episode.